another person later in this evening, but we're going to talk about another aspect in this study that we've been looking at on the disastrous effects of the cannabis industry here locally. And today's topic is we're going to look at the human trafficking, or I'm just going to call it human slavery side of things, and not in some far distant land, but right here in our backyard. And so when John and I will meet on Tuesday mornings, usually before we do something like this, kind of work through our notes and whatnot. And John shared some stories, and there was one in particular of a gift shop that you went to when you were working as an officer in Las Vegas. Could you share that one with us here, kind of to get us started?
Sure. So, human trafficking really goes across many different sectors in our country, or different areas of the economy, not just cannabis. So obviously that'll be our focus tonight. But there was a call we had went to in Chinatown. If you don't know, yes, there is a Chinatown in Las Vegas. Very small, but it's there. And we went into this gift shop, and we heard somebody crying in the back room. So unrelated to why we were there. And we asked what was going on back there, and they just kind of looked at us and said, nothing's going on. Like, okay, well, now we got to go.
Right.
And we pulled this curtain back that leads to, like, we just assumed it was their storeroom area where they store their stuff. And when we looked back there, there was no lights on, anything but the light coming in from the shop itself. You can see there was probably about 15 mattresses on the ground scattered there, and several of them had people on there sleeping. And it was just like, what is this? And it ended up, we called out Vice team in Vegas, the detail that deals with that type stuff, and pretty much everybody that was back there was trafficked in some way to get here.
In a gift shop in Chinatown in Las Vegas.
Yeah. And that's just one. It's pretty prevalent there, especially with the adult side of the adult industry in Las Vegas. And so that's what a lot of the human trafficking is for, that comes into Las Vegas and Atlanta. Those are the big areas where you'll see used for the sex industry.
Okay. Yeah, tonight too, what we want churches to have, there's a world running in parallel with the one that most of you live in. Yeah. And it's right behind a curtain in a back room in some store that you may frequent or you may walk by all the time, and you don't even realize it because your mind isn't even thinking that way. What we want to do tonight is kind of go, these things are happening right around us. John, you mentioned that movie Sound of Freedom. How many of you guys saw the movie Sound of Freedom? So, okay, quite a few of you saw the Sound of Freedom. There was something you mentioned to me when we were talking about it, talking on Tuesday.
Yeah, well, it was just the fact that Amazon Prime, Netflix, Disney, and Apple all refused to have the film on their platform.
The four largest media
And it
groups.
just baffled me. Why would you not want a film about human trafficking and somebody who went out of their way to save people?
And Disney had the rights to that movie.
Yeah, originally it was a Disney film, right.
And sold it to Angel Studios.
Sold it to Angel Studio, yeah. But the thought that these platforms, for whatever their reason is, I can't even comprehend why they wouldn't show this or have it on the platform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's not even a small thing. Human trafficking is not a small conversation. It's a very large one that happens not very far away. Andrea, I'm so thankful that you're here tonight because you just had a day of training. And so, this is so great, church, because last week with Ivan and Luke talking about environmental stuff, and John and Andrea sharing the week before that. It's so great having, I don't know if you appreciate it, but I do, this data, the information that we've been getting, because it gives us points of like, oh, that's a good thing. I didn't know that thing. Well, Andrea just went to training, and you've got training over the next couple of days, specifically dealing with the cannabis industry in our county as well as 4 other counties, right? What was the course or the thing that you had today that you just took, that you just came from to come here? Like you drove from there. Talk about fresh information, church. Like this is like hours old type information. But yeah, what was the course today that you were in?
So this is something that's kind of an encouragement to our county as well as the 4 other counties that are involved in this. There is a coalition that deals mainly with human trafficking on cannabis industry, and Humboldt is one of the counties that is of the 5. So every month we have a Zoom meeting, and once a year we meet in person. So it was our in-person training is today and tomorrow in Benbow. So that's what I came from today. The coalition's called the Northern California Coalition to Safeguard Communities, or the NCCSC. So it's kind of a mouthful.
Yeah. So then, okay, this when Andrew was describing this to me, I was going, okay, so there's a coalition specifically on human trafficking, specifically in relation to the cannabis industry. And 5 counties, so Butte, Humboldt, Lake, Mendocino, Trinity, yes. And it's fairly new, like a year and a half to 2 years old. This coalition is just about 2 years old. So I would think something starting 1 or 2 years is kind of a smaller kind of a thing. This is not a small thing, and the resources that are given specifically for human trafficking dealing with cannabis is a large one. But where are the finances coming from this?
So it's, has anybody ever heard of the man named Warren Buffett? Okay, so he has a son named Howard, and Howard is has a heart for this. It's something that came upon, that he came upon with his work, his line of work. He was a deputy in Illinois, and then he finished out a sheriff's term there, so he was the sheriff of, I can't remember the county, but that in itself is rather interesting, a billionaire, multi-billionaire son doing such a humble, public servant job. It's amazing. But so his family made money in agriculture, as we're aware of, right? So he had still wanted to continue in that line of work as well, and wanted to do something wonderful with agriculture and learn how to end the hunger issues in areas that experience so much hunger, such as Africa. So he thought, I'll buy a big ranch property along the U.S. border to Mexico, because the climate there is arid as well as it is in Africa, and he wanted to try and do some experimentation with how to grow food so that we could try to end hunger. And he experienced so many challenges with that being on the border. And so he wrote a book, and it's called The 50-State Border Crisis. And he sent that book to every single sheriff in the nation and invited them to come and view it themselves. So the sheriff of Butte County, Corey Honey, took him up on that offer after seeing that there was such a huge heroin problem in Butte, and it wasn't being manufactured in Butte, and he traced it back to down in Mexico. So he wanted to go down there and see the source of where this was coming from. So that sparked the relationship with Butte and Howard, and they actually Howard had contacted Sheriff Honey and said, well, can I come up and see a cartel grow? And so they took him up into Butte County and showed him the cartel grow. And that's where this foundation kind of came about. So it's got a history, I think, dating back to like the inception of the ideas was probably like Honey went down to Arizona in 2018, I think. And then in 2019 or so, Howard came up to Butte County. And since then, they've kind of just been going back and forth ping-ponging it. And now we have our coalition that kind of had its inception in 2022.
So it's a large influx of money from a person who's concerned, and a fortuitous connection that ended up happening, for sure.
Yeah, he's even purchased a brand new helicopter for Butte County, which is wonderful because all the 5 counties in the coalition get to utilize this, and it's been such a wonderful resource. And it's kind of cool to fly in it too, but it's also really a wonderful thing because you can have that you can have somebody in the sky watching over while you're doing a raid, or we'll use it to check out possible locations. But it's definitely a very expensive resource that county budget does not sustain.
So, Andrew, I'll give a description here of like the type of people and positions that it's made up of, and then could you tell us the mission statement of it as well? So it's made up of law enforcement, district attorneys, social workers, intelligence analysts, of which, Andrew, you're one, and then also forensic accountants, trying to track where the money's coming from and where it's going to, which also that's part of your specialization, right? Yeah.
I've taken several classes in it, but I wouldn't say that I'm a forensic accountant.
But
I have some knowledge of it. And
Gotcha.
I try to do my part before I hand over, because I'll like, gather as much as I can, and then I'll pass it along for more in-depth analysis.
so then what's the mission statement for the Northern California, this coalition?
It's to protect the safety of residents and the environment through a multidisciplinary approach to prevent human trafficking and other violent crimes, dismantle transnational or criminal organizations, and mitigate environmental damage.
So church, I don't know if you knew that's going on or if that exists here, but it does. And that, in what can be a discouraging topic to talk about, that was such encouraging news. So Andrew, if you could help us just see some of the indicators of what human trafficking is, or could you kind of walk us through some of those things?
Sure. First, let's, before we do that, can we throw up the FBI definition so that people can understand what it actually means? Mm-hmm. So human trafficking is a compelling or coercing of a person's labor services or commercial sex acts, and often involves the use of force, fraud, or coercion to compel victims to engage in such labor or services. And that is the FBI's definition.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And
Why is the labor part is interesting, because we all think it's the sex traffickers, we think of the marijuana industry, but what does it also include when you're talking about labor? The people in the corners?
oh, yeah. So right now we're talking about the marijuana industry, but another thing that people don't think about is if you've ever seen people while you're driving down the street or off the highway and they're selling fruit or flowers, they are also, I'm not saying that every single one of them, but that is another use, another thing that they're used for.
Those people would be trafficked. There's a percentage of those folks that are
Yes.
being trafficked.
There's a likelihood of it, yes.
So the idea of like you drive by people all the time that are being trafficked and not think anything of it. So when you mentioned that particular example, I thought I had never even considered that.
And if you think about it, when you're driving by, many times they don't have access to a vehicle. They're just dropped off. I mean, do you see a car a lot of the times around anywhere where they are? Sometimes, right? Maybe they're not the trafficked ones, but and there's no access for them to use a restroom, go get food for themselves. There's nothing. They're under somebody else's control at that point. They're beholden to when somebody's going to come pick them up.
And sometimes these are folks that they're doing this because they're trying to pay off a debt.
Yes. So they're paying off a debt, and it's basically when they're entering our country from the southern border, likely, they have to pay off a debt, and they are not told necessarily where they're going. They don't know where they're going. And where they're going is based upon several things, either how much they owe, how much they have paid already to get across, and another thing might be like where they may potentially have family or other contacts.
So their families could be they use their families.
Oh, definitely. They use their families to threaten them, for sure.
Okay. So what then are some of the indicators then that we could see? You gave one specific example, which I appreciate because that's a very local example that we could see. What are some other things, general indicators?
Sure. If you want to, we can start by throwing up the International Labor Organization indicators of forced labor. It's kind of small, but these are the indicators showing abuse or vulnerability, deception, physical or sexual violence, or both. Withholding of wages, that's one that's very prevalent in the marijuana industry, very, very prevalent. Excessive overtime, abusive working and living conditions, debt debt bondage, which is owing, so they're working and they're not getting money because they're paying off a debt. Restriction of movement, a lot of the times too, I think that's one of them up there, retention of identity documents. They don't have possession of their passports, any identification, driver's license, matricular cards, green cards, none of that do they actually have in their own physical possession. They're taken from them.
So these are some of those indicators of that forced labor.
Yes.
Okay.
And we do have another screen as well, the U.S. Department of Labor indicators. It's similar. So coercive recruitment, confiscation of identity, papers, travel documents, forced overtime, physical or verbal violence, limited freedom of movement or communication, no freedom to resign in accordance with legal requirements. So they don't obviously abide by like any labor laws or anything like that. Where do they go to complain? You can't, there's nowhere for them to go to complain.
Yes. And then do we have another one as well? Or
Well, I'll just talk to you, talking about the limited freedom of movement and communication. So the freedom of movement is, a lot of these people will be dropped off somewhere in a very remote area. They don't have control over how they can get out of there. They're dropped off in the hills. Much of the time, it's really difficult for even us as a law enforcement team sometimes to get to the locations that they are at least some of these grows. And as last week, if you were here, Ivan from IERC had mentioned that sometimes it can be quite a hike. So it's not necessarily easy. Even if they wanted to walk out on foot, it would be miles and miles and miles before they'd actually find an actual viable roadway where somebody may encounter them. Another thing for limited communication, we do encounter that they have phones, but they're not hooked up to any kind of service, a lot of them. They just work off of Wi-Fi, and if you would imagine there's no Wi-Fi in the hills, there's no Wi-Fi at a remote site. So while they're out, they don't have communication with anybody other than the people that are there working with them.
Right. Okay. So then what are some other things here then that John, you mentioned another story of walking into a drugstore like a CVS or something and seeing a whole group. Could you describe that story to me?
Oh, sure.
To us?
I knew what it was because I knew what I was looking at, but I don't know if any of you have been in a CVS or pharmacies, and you'll see large groups. This could be a grocery store too, but you'll see large groups of people come in, and common signs: jeans, pants with mud on them, probably wearing boots, rain-type boots. Again, dirty. They themselves, I'm not saying they're dirty, they look homeless. They're just, you can tell they've been working throughout the day. And that's what happens. They'll bring them down, when they want. They'll bring groups of them down to go get prescriptions filled, get whatever they need for the day or for the next several weeks, because they can't leave these locations, most of them. And these are people even that come here, let's say from Europe, and come here because they want to come trim. And they're not treated that much different than people who are human trafficked. Once you get out there, like she said, it's so barren that there's nowhere for you to go to, nobody to complain to if you wanted to. I remember Andrea had told me when she was working dispatch one night for Arcata, and a lady had called, wasn't it from Europe or somewhere, saying her daughter was coming here to work in the agricultural business, and the mom, to her, that's really what she thought her daughter was coming here to do. Do you want to finish that story?
It's not an isolated incident. We've had many of those kinds of calls. And it's not just from Europe. It'd be, I remember there was also one from New York who called and said, "Oh, my daughter is out there working on a farm, and I haven't heard from her in multiple weeks, and that's not like her, and I don't know where she is, and there's nowhere." They want to file a missing persons report is what they want. And it's tough because they're not likely in Arcata. There's not a whole lot of like isolated grows in Arcata, but it is really sad because family doesn't know. They don't know, or they're just very naive about where their child is going and what their child is actually doing. They're not going to pick flowers, they're not going to grow corn or, you know, any kind of normal crop. And it's really sad that is something that wasn't shared. They didn't have that kind of a relationship of trust, I guess, maybe with their family, that they could tell their parents what they were actually going to do, because in those circumstances, I truly believe that, like you were saying, people that come here, there are people that come here specifically to trim, and that they know what they want to do. They think it's like a vacation to them. They're going to go and do this thing, make, you know, a few $1,000 is what they're thinking, and then go back to wherever they came from. Argentina, Germany. You'll see it out on the plaza during, you know, harvest months. You'll see a lot of foreign people that are here specifically to do that and work in the industry.
John, you were mentioning too, for our area, there's an unusual number of missing persons.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't fit the average baseline for...
No, and if you look at the length of time too that some of these cases are, 30, 40 years old, this goes way back. Every department has them. The county sheriff's department has them. Eureka, Arcata.
These cold cases, in a sense.
These cold cases that people have just been missing for 10, 20, 30 years, and there's not really anything to follow. There's just no real evidence trail that, you know, even if law enforcement had the manpower to go follow even small tips, there's just really, as these groves are so isolated and so far out in the middle of nowhere, that you're not going to find traces of these people once something's done to them.
Right.
And it's like she said, some of the people, if they feel that they haven't been paid enough or they're not getting paid overtime and they start complaining, those are the people who run the risk of being victims of missing person victims, homicides, and things like that.
So I think church, for us too, just for looking for these folks, tend to be younger. Is that true? I'm not making a stereotype here, but that's generally speaking what we're seeing. That don't seem to have any connection, not a college student per se or anything like that.
Not necessarily, no. They don't necessarily have any like community ties or anything like that.
And so
Which makes it harder because you don't have friends that you can talk to or anything like that. So
Right.
when they go up missing, they're missing. Yeah, there's nowhere to follow.
Yeah, so for us to be aware, for God to open our eyes for the awareness of these type of folks around us. Andrea, there's when you're processing like the evidence and all these other things, there's like an evidence sheet that you guys go through. Could you talk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, so part of the coalition was trying to come up with how do we determine if somebody is a victim? How do we even go about starting that conversation with somebody that we encounter? Because before we had this coalition, that wasn't really even something that we dealt with when we went to grows. We just, took our crew and we went and we dealt with the crimes that were there, the illegal grows, the environmental crimes, and not much else than that. Everybody was more or less viewed as a suspect, not a victim. And with this training came some different tools and brainstorming of ideas. And so we do have an evidence cheat sheet. So they're like indicators. We had like how to determine. So our evidence-based human trafficking victim identification cheat sheet. Evidence of inhumane, dangerous, toxic, reasonable, unreasonable conditions of working and living. It just helps us to kind of go into a scene and see, does this, site have potential for victims, not just criminals? And it opens our eyes to a whole different aspect of, a case that we were not building out. But this helps us to kind of go through this little checklist in our minds. I mean, we don't carry this around with us really, but it's just something that we train on. So that's the first part of the page there. And if you want to go to the second, so they're more like the isolation and control would it be difficult for them to leave if they felt they could leave, if they were told that they could? Do they have transportation? How long has it been since they've communicated with family? Verify that in phones. So when we go to a site, everybody's phones are taken. I process them and get more evidence of other locations that we might be able to go and search for people and for the different illegal grows. But in that, we also see a whole lot of information that comes from it, such as were people trafficked? They'll have conversations about their journey up from the south, how that went, and it's sad to see because a lot of it's like snapshots, pictures to prove that they're where they are on their journey, because they have to report to their coyote, their cartel person that brought them over, like, okay, we're here, and they'll ask for that. So evidence that the workers are not in charge or independent. Do they depend on other people as their source of food or water? Which I'm going to go over a case study at the end here, and you'll see evidence, well, in the photographs, and then as well as I'll just verbalize it, that many times they don't have their own means to go out and just like, oh, I'm going to go to the grocery store and get some food for myself. That's not something that is part of their daily or weekly life. It's, you eat this is your menu. Sorry if you're gluten-free or vegetarian, that does not matter to them. You're eating what they are cooking or providing. You don't have any choice in it.
That you also mentioned, I saw this, the screening tool that you have as well for human trafficking.
And the screening tool, if you want to put that up, is this we do bring with us. This is just like a checklist that we can go through. It's an interview. You don't need to be able to actually read it legibly, but just to show you that we have a checklist that we go through, and we sit down each person, whether it's just 2 people that we encounter on a site or 20. Everyone's going to sit there and they're going to go through this. So that's a challenge, because many times we have a language barrier. And I have been forced to muddle through with my very poor Spanish and have to try and go through these as much as I can with some people, at the very least to try and get name and date of birth. And that's even a challenge sometimes, because getting people to talk is not easy. A lot of people don't want to be a victim. They're
So even though they
way.
are a victim, they don't want to be identified as a victim.
No, not at all. We have a real hard time with getting them to want to even identify. You can see, from the list of the indicators, that there's a high likelihood that this person is being victimized and trafficked, and they don't want to identify that way at all. They don't want to rock the boat. They, as Jim had said, are they using their families as a threat, like a means to threaten them? Yes, they are. They're afraid that something's going to happen to their family or their friends. They just want to kind of keep their heads ducked, do the work, and get out as soon as they possibly can, because they're there under the assumption that at some point I'm going to pay off my debt and I'm going to be able to go and be free and in society and do life as a, hopefully naturalized citizen at some point in America, but living that life of, the American dream. And they don't have any opportunity for that doing the work that they're doing while they're there stuck. And unfortunately, these poor people, they never see a dime, a lot of them. They're begging for their money sometimes, begging.
So they're sold a lie of the American dream or this success or one more debt to pay off and then we're done. And then I'll finally be free and clear of all of this, is the lie that keeps repeating itself and getting trapped in that. That's what you're saying?
Yes, definitely.
There's
this is a nice tool that we use. And at my training today, we had a Homeland Security agent that was there discussing a case, and he had supplied us all with a tool that they use, which is similar to this, but I think I like theirs better, so I'm going to see if maybe we can switch our team over to using theirs because it had I mean, we have this in English and in Spanish, but I liked the way that the Homeland Security's presented better.
Is there also a fear of law enforcement too amongst the?
Yes, yes. But I mean, even bringing myself that's not going in with any like major gear or anything like that, they're still reluctant to talk to me. They're reluctant to talk to other people that we might have on the team as well that are not in any type of law enforcement gear.
Okay. Well, how about we keep moving then? And so let's look a little bigger then. So global data, do you want to look at that?
Sure. Yeah, if you want to put up the global data. So I wanted to give you guys we'll go from like big picture to, state and then down to a local. So global data, you can see here on forced labor. So 27.6 million people worldwide are engaged in forced labor. And then they break it down by sex and then also by the type of the forced labor. So I found it to be eye-opening because I would have, without looking at these numbers, I would have thought that sex trafficking would have been the bigger of the pieces of the pie here. But if you look at that, it's not the case. Not to say that it's not a problem. It is, obviously. 23% of those 27.6 million people are being forced in sexual exploitation. An additional 3.9 are forced labor and state imposed. And then
What does that mean, state imposed as opposed to non-state imposed?
that's a good question. I'm not really entirely sure about that.
Only because 63% is the forced labor non-state imposed.
Non-state imposed, which I would think is more like of illegal, but I couldn't imagine, and I don't want to take a stab at it I might butcher it, but.
But your point there is that it isn't actually sex trafficking being the number one, which might be the assumption.
It was actually kind of a surprise to me because I thought it was going to be a smaller percentage of the global data, but it is not. And this is a really interesting couple of websites. So this one that I got, this one was from, you can go and find it. It's global data on forced labor in the International Labor Organization. I think it's interesting because it goes on, if you want to go further and do more research on your own, that one as well as the national website breaks it down on the types of products that are commonly seen that are created by forced labor. And it kind of makes your heart break a bit because you think like, well, I go shopping and I buy that. Ooh.
We can afterwards get that information from you as well for the
Sure,
websites
yeah.
and stuff. Okay. So this is the global forced labor data. So we're going to get a little bit more specific then?
Yeah, let's go national. And it's the National Human Trafficking Hotline.
It might be the next one in.
Should be.
There it is,
there you
yeah.
go. So this one's going to come up in, I think, three screens. I just kind of took snippets of this website. And you see in the top corner, it's National Human Trafficking Hotline. And this is, you can pick any of the 50 states, and it'll give you the information on that specific state. But since we're in California, this is California's, so that's just the intro screen. If you want to pop to the second one there, this is the types. I think that this data was from 2021. Yes.
And so this is for California.
This is just California specific. And this is anything that's reported to the hotline. So they get tips via multiple venues. So they can get it through a text message, you can call, you can go online and fill out a form if you want to complain and be a victim, or you can just as a member of the public say, hey, I think maybe, this might be something you want to look into. And so that's a resource for us as a community to report that. But so in California, you've got.
So if we see someone that we think might be trafficked, this is a resource we can
It is
use.
a resource, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'll always call, you can always call your local law enforcement as well, because that's local. So in California in 2021, it was 1,023 sex trafficked, and then there was labor, 131 reported, and then sex and labor, 63. So It's a decent number. I think that it probably is a lot more than what's reported, than what you're seeing there. But if you want to go to the next screen, it should show you, these are just for labor trafficking. So domestic work like housekeepers, cooks, those types of folks. There's 26 of that piece of the pie are involved in that industry. And agriculture and farms, 12. And when we think about agriculture and farms, it can be illegal marijuana. It can also be, legal farming.
And then a few other, this was a much longer list, but these are just
Yeah.
the top
the top
five
the top
or so.
five, I think you did.
Okay.
Peddling, construction, illicit activity. I would say that would also be drug stuff.
Okay, so we've gone global. We've looked at now some California stats from just one hotline and what's being reported. And then you've got a case study.
I do, but let me just bebop over here, because since we were at this training today, or I was at this training today, you can get data from that. So from our coalition, the 5 counties, 3 counties ID'd 32 probable victims of human trafficking since July of 2022, which was our last in-person meeting. So since our last meeting a year ago, 3 counties have ID'd 32 people. Those 3 counties are Trinity, Humboldt, and Lake. Humboldt, we have identified 12 just over this summer. And then Lake had 13. All 5 of the counties, though, since the inception of the coalition, have cases that are tied to human trafficking and to the Sinaloa cartel and Bulgarian.
Wait, say the last part again. So these are tied to the human trafficking in these cases are tied to who?
The Sinaloa cartel
In Mexico?
in Mexico.
And then also you said
Some Bulgarian ties as well, like Eastern Europe.
okay.
Some of the counties actually had some heavy ties to China as well.
Concerning trafficking? Okay. And that data is just from a few hours ago.
Yes, I just learned that because I track our county's stuff, but I don't know necessarily what's going on in other counties except for what I hear at our monthly Zoom meetings, and I'm not in charge of keeping track of everybody's data, just ours. So it was interesting to see what we've done in just the past year as a coalition.
So then how about we look at that case study then that you've got there? And I know you're going to call out some pictures here as you've got them. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you how this all happened first, and do it in a way that it's not going to reveal too much. So this April, we received information about a case. Well, we received it a little bit earlier than April, but we acted upon it in April. And it was just a house that had like some high power usage. So we went there to go and bust a possible marijuana grow. And we did. And there were 2 workers there on site that spoke no English. And so we went through the screening tool with them and spoke with them through the language line translation services, because it was actually in an area in Eureka that we had service, which is great because sometimes we can't use the language line because there's no cell service, but the coalition bought us a sat phone with Starlink, so that shouldn't be an issue anymore, hopefully. But anyways, so we encountered these 2 gentlemen at this grow site, and then the property owner was there as well. So we seized his phone, and from that phone, I went through and I combed through every photograph, every text message, every email, everything that was on there, deleted, not deleted, and came to learn that it was a family business, and he was just one piece of the puzzle. And so I found a couple other potential properties that we might be able to go to, and had asked for our crew to go and fly over this 60-acre parcel down in the southern Humboldt area that was owned by the family. And just so happened that they were serving a warrant just to the north of that property, and they thought they were all done. And then my sergeant said, "What is that? I hear a generator going. That's really weird because we just shut this one down." And so they walk a little bit to the south, and then I was at the office. I didn't go on the search warrant, so I get a phone call from one of the deputies asking me, "Can you verify these coordinates in our GIS system and tell me who owns the property?" And I just about jumped out of my chair because it was the property that I told them, "Please, can you guys go and take a look at this one?" And it's so funny that it just was, I don't know, serendipitous. It was lovely. So I was so happy to hear that they were at that site, and it was really crazy. I guess there was a ton of people that just ran. So they arrived there and people just scattered. And unfortunately, you can't, interview somebody that's running away from you. So they weren't able to detain anybody there, but they dealt with the grow. There was multiple buildings on site that were growing indoor, and then also some living quarters on site. And then from there, we had learned that, not based on any phones because they all ran, so I didn't get any more data, but what we did get was some indication of somebody who may have been a responsible party for that particular area. Not the person that owned it. We already knew who owned the land, but there was a vehicle on site that had registration, and so we kind of figured, okay, well, this is somebody we're going to check out now. And so from there, we served a warrant another day, and this is where we encountered our human trafficking situation with people that did not run yet. We were more prepared, I guess, and it was a more confined area because that other one was an open, 60-acre parcel with multiple buildings. And my sergeant said in his career that is probably the biggest grow that he'd been on. So we can start with the first picture. Okay, so when I was telling you about finding data in phones, this is a data extraction in the form that I get it in when I do it. So this is kind of jumping a little bit out of order, but I just think it's interesting to tell you how people are trafficked. So this is a phone that was seized at the property where we encountered the 12 human trafficking victims. We seized this phone from one of the boss people. And it's going to be a conversation that you probably can't read very well, and it's also not great because it's Google translated. It was all in Spanish, so I had to make it in English for you guys. So it says, "Hello," and I blanked out a bunch of stuff because you can't see who they're talking to. "Hello, excuse me, are you still making MICAs?" And MICAs is green cards. It just doesn't, Google Translate doesn't recognize that. So, "Are you still making green cards?" And then the contact that she's speaking to says, "Hi, yes, of course." And I don't know about "here we are chatting." I don't think that's the right translation, but if you want to go to the second screen, "How much do you charge to make a MICA green card and ship it to California?" "It costs you $150. That's the conversation she had. This is just a portion, and you see the yellow dot. I've tagged it for evidence. So that was a conversation that she had with somebody who she must have used before in the past to make fake documents for people. And if you want to go to the next screen, that, I know you can't read it, and it's fine, but if we remember the first, if you were here for the first night, the economic night, I talked about that program that I kind of track things and see money transactions that occur at like Western Union type places. So this is Intermex, and it was in Fortuna. That's the top I circled in blue, and that's just the address of the location that it was. And then the bottom, there's a little circle in blue, and that is $150. So that's her payment to, so it's evidence, it's just how you piece things together, because you really have to, you'd think like, oh, well, this is definitely something that proves it just seeing the text message, but it's not. You have to really, really.
You have to find the receipt. Quite literally, you have to find the receipt.
I found it. So there it is. It was on her phone in a picture, because they, send evidence that they paid it. So that's the $150. So anyway, she's paying for people. She's trafficking them up from, this one was from Guatemala. And if you want to go to the next screen, So these are snapshots that that person that she was speaking with, that she paid the $150, and I blotted out stuff, but the picture that looks like kind of a computer screen, that was him showing how he's making the green card. And then the second one that has the pictures stacked, that's the green card on top and a fake social security card on the bottom. And so that cost you $150.
And this is all that same chain, that case starting from that text. So you really are the tech person that gets the phones and like scours through all the stuff and looks through the data and has to go through probably a mountain of data to find.
And see a lot of stuff you don't ever want to have to see on a phone. Awful stuff.
Very, very awful stuff. But yeah, if I could wash the inside of my brain, I would do that. Sometimes I come home and I say, okay, we just have to watch, I don't know, like we have to have
a Hallmark movie? Yeah.
Everything. I've had too much like XR-rated things for the day, so we have to stop. But yeah, so that's what was produced by this individual for some of the people that she had worked getting up from the southern border. After that, I think I can show you some pictures of the living quarters. Oh wait, so this is, remember when we were going over the indicators of human trafficking, and one of them was that you don't have possession of your documents? So in the office at this location where the victims were in this house, she was a very organized person running this, but she had binders and file cabinets and all this. Everybody that was on that grow, she had all their stuff. So that's just showing you, without showing you people's names and pictures and things, but yeah, those were not in their physical possession. Nor could they go get them. And the grow that I told you that we went to, the 60-acre parcel, big, this is what you would see. Those are their living conditions. And that would be a nicer, so that was probably like somebody higher up on the food chain there, nicer area for them to live. And that's just another view of the first room. And that's what they produce, trash, lots of trash. Now this one is actually at the house where we encountered them. And I circled in blue up in the top there. It's kind of hard to see, there's a little white thing. That's a Ring camera. So that was facing where they are sleeping. So this is a living room in the residence. And in this, there were 2 buildings that people were living in. This was from the main house, and then there was a secondary house as well. So this isn't even all of it. There was tons and tons of mattresses on the floor. And so that was another indicator too. You're being surveilled. You're not able to, get up, walk around, and do things without anybody knowing. I mean, you're under lock and key and watch. And that's another view. So same room, just a different view of it. But that's basically it. So it's like no different than jail, really. I mean, you have like a small aisle that you walk down, and you're sleeping next to all these people. And
So Andrea, while there may not be necessarily physical restraints, although have you ever seen that in a place where
I haven't, no.
So then, but there is a restraint of, if you can run if you want, but we have all your stuff, right? So that's, in a sense, that is the restraint. Like it's like a handcuff that's invisible, but we have your stuff. So you can go ahead and run, but we're going to keep all of your stuff.
And they would have no idea where they're running to either.
No, a lot of they don't know where they're
they
going.
Just get brought out to the middle. They've never lived up here before, so wouldn't even know what direction either, because this is all forest.
And I was at this one. I went after learning that they went to that parcel where everybody ran, and when they said they were going to go and do this, I'm like, I'm coming. So I had interviewed all 12 of them, and then we waited to have somebody from the correctional facility that spoke Spanish, and he came and gave them the full interview. I just was able to basically get name and date of birth from them and not much else. And some people would tell me that they wouldn't even give me that. It was nearly impossible, some of them.
Are there any other points on this case study that you wanted to show us?
What'd you say? Any other photos? I don't think, yeah, just, this was in a phone. So this is in a phone. This is what it looks like when you're coming up from the border. So that was
What are we looking at? Only because, I
a
mean,
bunch of people in a warehouse or some sort of
oh, they're
room.
they're laying down?
They're laying down for the night, and what you get is you get so the lady who had been in contact with the person making the fake ID cards, while these people are on their journey up, is asking for pictures to be sent. Send me a picture, show me where you're at. Or I don't know if that's like I doubt that it's out of a whole lot of concern for if you're okay.
It's more of a
or less
checkpoint, like have you reached, what's your progress?
And she did bring some people that were family members over, so some of them it was out of concern. And for those people, she would tell them, do not tell the Coyotes that we are family. Don't tell them we're related. Because, as we talked about just earlier, they'll leverage that against somebody, and they don't want to become victims. And this is a really sad situation, because the person that I'm talking about we found in the office when we were at the house, we found in one of the binders that they were a documented victim of human trafficking through the Homeland Security themselves. So a human trafficking victim, now human trafficking
Others. You could see how, Satan hates people, and how that, what was done to them all of a sudden, well, I can do it to others, and just, you would think it would be the exact opposite, that it would be, I would never want to do that, and yet.
And to some degree, they may still be under control too. Their families may still be
Their
getting
debt's
threatened.
not paid yet still. The debt that'll never actually ever be paid. With this image and this kind of thing, I'm going to ask Bobby Lucas. Where are you at, Bobby? Come on up, Bobby. Grab a seat right here. Bobby shared a story with me, and it was, Bobby, back when you were with the Drug Task Force, is that correct?
Yes.
Could you share that with me, and just the I think we've kind of got a picture tonight, but just that devaluing of human life that you saw firsthand?
There's a couple of situations. Remember, one incident was over in Reading. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with how the height of eucalyptus or trees, bushes, the red soil, they're probably 5-6 feet, and just massive bushes. I remember one, and Ivan, when that picture went up, I was like, wow, I remember how far that was, of crawling on your hands and knees through those mahogany, that's what they were, mahogany bush trees, for over a mile on your hands and knees to get back to an area where you can actually stand up, and areas where they had cut the bushes, and each plant was probably maybe 3-4 feet. They were all clones, so they were massively growing right away. But just the items that you would find there, they were all Mexican nationals. Yeah, I'm out of it, so the political blowback to kind of people, you can't say that. Yes, I can. The tortillas, the propane tanks, they would live out there for months at a time. No, that garbage that we were seeing in examples of that, it's inhumane. What they did to the people that were out there, and we'd fly in and they'd run off and you never find them in any of those fields or anything else. But it's, they don't care about them. If you complain, you walk around and you're looking on the different properties, and you happen to come across a bag of lye, that's your worst nightmare of looking to see, well, why is a bag of lye out here? Because they've killed a person. They don't care. You complain, you don't go by the rules or anything else. You're just a number. It's the value of that crop compared to you. Am I willing to lose, or if they are losing, willing to lose $1 million crop, or your life? You mean nothing. You're just a statistic and another person that's going to come in and take your place.
With the Conex containers, could you share that?
Imagine this room right here, buried. Probably the height of the ceiling is probably 6 feet from the surface. Everything else is underground. It's a cottage industry. I've gone into a grow. What it looked like on top was amazing. So you had a clearing of land, and you had a couple of trees and everything else. Like, why is this travel trailer or little like pop-up trailer? What is it doing here in the middle of nowhere? And you're looking around and nothing. You open the door and look inside. There's nothing. You pull up the carpet and you go, that looks like a door right there. You pull up the door and you see a ladder that just goes down, like from the ceiling all the way down. Conex boxes that are cut open, sides and everything else, where it's actually this room they would put underground. That's happening so many times over in our southern Humboldt area. It's because if the pressure gets of finding the groves that are, you can go on Google Maps. I invite you to look on Google Maps and look at Alder Point. And you just magnify that area, you'll see groves for miles. You'll see hoops and everything else. But anyway, getting back to that, it was massive 1,000 plant grows that was in the Conex boxes that were constructed to be like a building underneath. You had a culvert that would go, the generators underground also. So you had the plants in the huge room, and then you had the 75 kW, which is like several $100,000 generator that's down there. You had the fuel that the tanks that were down there. You had the culverts that were probably 10 feet wide, going probably a quarter mile underground. So the heat signature from the generators wasn't detectable. You had massive fans that were blowing out of. So you had, it isn't a mom and pop thing. It is a massive industry. And when you get an area that's called Murder Mountain, they're murdering people. There are people that are reported missing. They don't care. They will give you the impression that it's a neat industry to get in, a fast industry to get in. You can make some quick money, but you're stuck. You try to leave. Well, why are you leaving? It isn't. They've sold all of these people and the politicians a bill of goods. It isn't. It's horrible conditions that people are in, and it's all about the money.
You mentioned, Bobby, when you mentioned like those Conex, those shipping containers underground, and this whole manufacturing facility underground, how easy to fill up some ventilation holes and then just walk away from it with folks in there and call it good done and walk away. In other words, that the disposable nature of people in there. And if you wanted to shut down an operation like that, for the growers to shut that down, not caring for the folks, it wouldn't take very much to do that.
Oh, no, they take it personal. They would just shoot the person right in front of everybody else. They don't try to hide it. It's violent. It's a very violent industry. It's not, a mom and pop. You cross them, they'll kill you.
And so, church, these are these some anecdotal stories? They are anecdotal for sure, but they, I think, represent just a small slice of what's happening on a daily basis around us, and not that far away. My prayer is that, we can, it's almost like the idea, I was talking to John and Andrea here, just that we would like pull the curtain back a little bit and go, just realize there's a whole bunch going on right around us. And I don't want us to be Christians that are so saturated in everything the world is doing. I don't want that to be the case. And I pray for people like Andrea and others that have to see the worst of what goes on to help protect people and to rescue people out of this type of human slavery. We as a church should definitely be praying for those in law enforcement and others that they have to look at horrible stuff, hear horrible stuff on a daily basis as part of their job to help people. But we as a church, we also can't be ignorant. And I don't mean ignorant in a bad way. I mean, we just didn't know. Well, now we have a little bit more that we know. And we have to pray, Lord, open our eyes to see what is right around us. For that teenage or 20-something-year-old kid that's not from around here or even from around this country, yet is around, and it's like, I'm going to engage in conversation with them and find out who they are and who their family is and what's going on. And that idea of, the Holy Spirit tugs on your heart about a person. Don't ignore that. Don't ignore that. God wants to use us to reach people who otherwise would be trapped in this bondage, in this slavery here.
Another thing, Jim, all this stuff we've talked about now for 3 weeks, I can pretty much guarantee you none of that was talked about for the last 3 or 4 months in Ohio as they're preparing to vote yesterday. And Ohio became the 24th state to legalize marijuana. And so
you're saying none of the economic downside, the environmental downside, or the human trafficking wasn't talked about?
No, they talk about how great it is. And if you looked at the bill in Ohio, there's a 10% tax on any marijuana product that you buy under this new bill that passed yesterday by 55% of the population in the state of Ohio. 10% tax, and it said, but don't worry, most of that money is going to go to addiction problems. I'm thinking, so we're going to legalize something that's going to cause addiction, but don't worry, we're going to have a tax for addictions. But I guarantee you most of Ohio doesn't know anything about this, and they just voted in. So if we're at 24 states, it's not going to be much longer before Congress realizes the money they can make by making this legal federally. Probably we're halfway there basically. It probably won't be that much longer before Congress legalizes it.
There's a legal name for these people also. They're called trimmigrants. So if you hear someone use that term, trimmigrant, those are the people who are just traveling, coming to our county for the purpose of going up in the hills and trimming for a season. And most of them, they get ripped off. They don't make the money that they thought that they were going to make because it's all about, what are you going to do, go to the cops? You're going to go to the cops, I'm going to kill you.
And that's also where that phrase, like, oh, I'm working up in the mountains kind of a thing, means. Yeah. What was the phrase that you heard, you said that was a new phrase?
Narco slavery?
Narco slavery was a
that
phrase
what
that
it
was
was?
brought up? Slavery directly related to the drug industry,
narco-slaves.
narcotics.
And,
And that's something you
they're
heard-
making money on for the cartels on the backs of these workers. And to say that legalization in any other state, in our state, in any state, is going to eliminate illegal growing is, there's evidence now. We're the guinea pigs. Colorado, Washington, Oregon. And it's not eliminated, it's not lessened, it's still there, and it's still a problem.
we're kind of wrapping up here, but there's some thoughts that are coming to my head. John, can you paraphrase what Amsterdam is doing concerning the whole drug trade?
Yeah, so for the longest time, Amsterdam was known as the tourism hotspot for marijuana users. You can go there and sit down at any coffee shop, order a latte and a joint, and you can sit there and smoke it right there inside the business. Whole sections of town had, various industries where while you're eating dinner or lunch, it was just everything was marijuana related, and it's just a place you went to back when marijuana was still legal everywhere here in the United States. A lot of college-age kids would go there. So what's happened, and I sent you this article, and if anybody wants it, we'll get you the article, but basically Amsterdam has not criminalized marijuana, but they've shut down the whole tourism side of it because they didn't realize that it was going to bring so much other crime, so much other problems, so much devastation to their city, to their country, but specifically Amsterdam in particular. So they've gotten rid of all of that. And there's an article about a study done on it, and they've talked to all the elected officials and things, and it just explains some of the stuff they saw, and it's directly related to the fact that they had the legalized marijuana tourism there. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, if Amsterdam gets it, why are we still going down this path? Because there's your case study right there.
Yeah.
As to what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. We definitely need to be praying, church. We definitely need to be praying for where we are. God has called us as Christians where we live for a reason and for a purpose. One of which is to be bold and to help people who have somehow rationalized that they're going to get ahead and this is the answer to what truly troubles them. They need Jesus is who they need, but yet they're being sold this is the answer. This is the peace you need. This is the way you'll get rich. This is the way that you'll be healthy. This is the way that you need Jesus. And we just have to be bold about it. We have to be bold about it where we live. Bobby, would you close us in a word of prayer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Lord Father God, we thank you for tonight and bringing us together to just have the curtain peeled back, Lord, that we just have a glimpse into the hurting souls that are out there, Lord. May you open our eyes to see those people that are in need, Lord. Everyone is, they're trying to escape, Lord. They don't want to be in that lifestyle. They see the end is destruction. May you just put it on our hearts, Lord, to be that shining light on the hill, Lord, to just keep proclaiming your word to those people that are just out there, Lord. We never know where the seed is going to land, and it's just going to sprout in their hearts, Lord. So, Lord, just empower us with your Holy Spirit to do your work in the time that it's needed, Father. We praise you and thank you in the powerful and precious name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Amen. I thank you guys for being here. I have an announcement to make for next Wednesday. We are going to next Wednesday have the team that was serving in Niger and the ministry that was going on. Most of us would have known of Jeff Woodkey and his imprisonment or his captivity taken as a hostage. But what we haven't really talked about or focused on is what was the ministry they were doing there for decades and decades. Next Wednesday, 6 o'clock, we will watch there'll be a 15-minute presentation that was put together. It hasn't been shown before, so it's a brand new presentation that's been put together. This footage had to be pulled off of VHS tapes. A lot of stuff had to be looked through to put all this together to see the ministry that has been going on and the people they were serving, the Wadabi people there in Niger. But we're going to have 5 people from the team that will be here, including Jeff and Els Woodkey. They'll be here as well next Wednesday. Because of the nature of the information that's going to be shared, both on the video as well as 15 minutes of a video and then question and answer and them sharing about the ministry, which will take up the night, I'm sure, very quickly. But none of that's going to be broadcast online, and none of it is going to be, none of it's going to be broadcast. Just for sensitivity's sake, we don't want that to be broadcast because we want their ministries to continue on and to keep people that would be mentioned and shown in the videos, their identities safe and all of that. So it is an in-person only event next Wednesday, 6 p.m. So I just wanted you to know about that. God bless all of you. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Yes.